those. In case it's ever of interest to someone who couldn't attend.
How many did you had? How many was on the one yesterday?
I think 5 or 6, somewhere in there. Yeah.
So everybody joined on yesterday then, huh?
Yeah, I know it'll take a little time to get it going. You know how things are.
Y'all have any damage to your property there in Montgomery?
Well, we didn't, but there are definitely some houses here that did. I was actually surprised, but by how heavy and strong the winds were. Like I hadn't heard that in a long time.
Oh yeah.
It was really weird because I was up with my son. He's 4 months, so he'll wake up sometimes, you know, and just went ahead and stayed up to. I went ahead and stayed up to kind of try to get some work done, and it sounded like a war zone outside.
Yeah, one of our members in Sylacauga, which is in Talladega County, she said the wind woke her up, and it just sounded like popping stuff, popping like in a fireplace,
Right.
And when she got up this morning, there was she had 2 trees in the back that were down, and also it kind of moved some of the patio furniture on her deck around.
Really?
But I didn't know it was that bad, at least especially up, out of the Mobile area. But
yeah. But then what's crazy is you look at you go and look at some of the images from New Orleans, and it looks powerful, but not like what we saw, not like what you would expect.
Right.
Given the wind.
It seemed like they had more rain than anything down there.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had let's see, one person just joined. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Wasn't planning to really be on camera, but I'll pop in and say hi.
Oh, we get a guest appearance. Yeah.
We gotta see your face.
It's been a week. It's been a day. All the things.
I would imagine y'all know each other pretty well, right? You and Bernard, Kelly?
I don't know.
Are
Kelly.
we both in Huntsville?
Yeah.
I'm in Huntsville. Oh, you're in Huntsville? No, I don't know Kelly.
I sure am.
Oh, well, this
I know everyone thinks Huntsville's so small and we should all know each other.
No, it's that y'all are giants. That's what it is.
And actually, I live in Harvest, which is west of, and actually I live on the Limestone County side of Harvest. Because Harvest.
Yeah, our office used to be there on Nick Davis and Old Railroad near there.
Okay. Yeah.
In Harvest, right on the line of Limestone County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly where that area is. That's where they have is it a Mapco service station there in the Publix now?
They do now, yes.
Oh, you said Railroad Pit Road. Oh, no, that's further down.
That's Waltriana.
Right, I'm thinking Waltriana and Nick Davis.
See, we know all the roads, Evan. We know all the landmarks and things.
Right. Well, that's a start. But I guess we'll go ahead and start. And the main way, depending on how big the group is, I think when we're small enough, it's nice to be able to introduce ourselves. We have one person coming on now too. Hello. I guess she'll join us when she can. But yeah, so I could definitely introduce you two to each other, but I promise you I'm gonna be very extra if I do it. And I don't know if you want that to happen. So let me let you choose. Do you want me to do it or do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'll introduce myself. Keep it low key. My name is Kelly Doolin, and I am with a company called Moriah Group, located here in Huntsville, Alabama. And I work specifically on one of our projects called Forward Promise, which is an initiative focused on the healing of boys and young men of color from the effects of historical and racialized trauma. And we do so through funding provided by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation of organizations that engage in culturally responsive healing practices and storytelling and narrative change, providing direct services to young men. It's one of the things that we do, but we met Evan through that initiative and during his time at Equal Justice Initiative, and he's done some work with our group, giving historical context here in the South to the work and many other things. So it's great to see you again, Evan. Thank you for all that you're doing.
No, thank
I'm
you
glad
for
to be
joining
here.
us. Thank you. And you know, she said the word network. The group of people they work with around the country. When you see a group of people in a room gathered together, and each one of them could stand up and give the kind of keynote address that will make people cry and do all the things that inspiring people do, and like that's the room. That's everybody at every table could do that. So those are the kinds of people that they work with at Forward Promise,
Okay.
and we share Forward in our name. So you had it first. So hopefully we can we can
Yeah,
continue to
no,
learn from you.
I am deeply humbled every time I am in those rooms with those individuals. It's certainly my privilege to be able to work with them. And I still haven't met Brian, and I fuss with Howard Stevenson every time. Every time we talk about the work.
Yeah. Well, so that
It's all good.
soon come.
Kelly, do you do any work with Harris Homes?
I am very familiar with Harris Home, just being a native of Huntsville. Most of the work that our company does right now is national work, and very little of it is locally based. But
Okay.
we are working on some inroads into the local work, and specifically moving things, being a part of the work here in the South and in Huntsville.
Okay. Well, if
Yeah.
I may ask, where do you go to church? That's where we usually find some commonality.
I am a member of the Oakwood University Church.
Oh, okay. That's
Yes,
Bird over there.
correct. Yes,
And
sir.
do you know May Benford?
May Beverage.
Benford, Benford.
I have heard the name.
Okay, she attends there, and trying to think of some more. Nick Jones attend,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all members of the NAACP, so
Okay.
that's why.
So you kind of outed yourself there,
Yes.
Colonel. Do you want to go next since you started your
Okay.
bio?
My name is Bernard Simelton. I'm president of the Alabama NAACP. I retired from the Air Force in 2000 and moved to Atlanta for about almost a year, and didn't do anything there really. And so we moved here in 2001, and I started working for Coastal Corporation, which is one of the companies over in Research Park. And I retired from there in 2016, and but I started with the NAACP started with the NAACP back in 1994 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I became the state president here in Alabama in 2009. And so we're trying to make a difference in a lot of different areas in the state, and there's a lot more work that's needed. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reciprocate the question.
Okay.
Where dost thou attend?
Indian Creek Primitive Baptist
Okay.
Church on
Yeah.
Indian Creek Road. Now there's two Indian Creek Primitive Baptist Church on Indian Creek Road.
Okay. I'm familiar with one.
Okay, I attend the one where Timothy Rainey is. It's a new facility we built back in 2008, I think it was. So that's
That's closer to what is that?
Providence.
Plummer Road in
Right,
Providence.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. That's where I attend. Did you sing in an Oakwood choir?
No,
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 I thought
I
everybody
haven't.
that it went to Oakwood or that attend church over there has to sing in the choir.
No, I am not among the many singers in the Oakwood community. I think the last choir I sang in was high school. I went to Oakwood Academy and I sang in the Academy choir. And then when I lived in Southern California for a while, and then before moving back to Huntsville, so I sang out there.
Okay. They got a beautiful choir.
Yes.
Wow.
Very proud of our choir.
Yeah. There's that video of them singing for, I think it's Kirk Franklin or something, and he falls on the floor. My dad sent me that randomly one day. But yeah, I really appreciate y'all taking the time to spend with us this afternoon. We're going to be doing these on a reoccurring basis, and I might end up asking one of you to, if I could interview you podcast style for like half an hour, and then we take some questions, or if you ever have something to present and you want a informal sort of comfortable platform, that's what I want this to be, for people who are doing work in the state to advance justice, advance civil and human rights. We can also connect as human beings and find the boost that we need to kind of continue in our work. So I'll record these to share, to make available for people who can attend. And if you have any issues with that towards the end, just let me know, and I won't include it in the archive folder. But for this session, I guess I'll be the kickoff presenter, and I'll just take some time to explain for you what Alabama Forward is and give you a little bit of our background. And then more importantly, explain sort of the concept of organizing that Alabama Forward sort of comes out of. And Bernard is very familiar with this, and we'll explain more about how he and I know each other. But the concept, Kelly, if you hadn't heard this term before, it's called civic engagement table. Have you ever heard somebody use that phrase?
Civic engagement table specifically, no.
Okay, so I didn't know the phrase until around, I want to say, this early spring when I was first starting to apply for the job, and really was able to learn about the history and the tactics associated with civic engagement tables. And some of this will sound very familiar. So I have a PowerPoint that I'll share. Let me pull this up for us. Okay, so can everybody see that slide, the first slide?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I inherited this, but I've added to it. I can't claim all of it. But what is a civic engagement table? And so you'll see this kind of gives you a basic definition that it's a large coalition of nonprofit organizations working together to build power around progressive civic issues and nonpartisan organizations. So these are specifically, this is a 501c3 civic engagement table. And this is basically a standing coalition. So, you know, sometimes coalitions come and go, or they mobilize in response to events or around certain campaigns. Civic engagement tables exist to do work over the long term and to really, you know, dig into the community and make a commitment. We have progressive values. We're going to stand for certain things. We're not going to be moved out of this space. We're here, and we're going to continue to grow and have an impact on our communities. They work to mobilize people on the ground and organizations around common goals and share resources for collective impact. So we all know that with our work, you know, these ideas about scarcity of resources and territory, ego, identity, all the things that are just a part of human nature definitely can become challenges for highly motivated, activist-oriented people, particularly within a system that sort of doles out resources in small portions here and there. And so tables exist to try to build an infrastructure that helps people not succumb to those things that often undermine our coalition. So, you know, tables provide funds for organizations, for their members. They're constantly working to help coordinate and inspire shared planning and sharing of resources among the members. When you have groups that are working on different issues, a table is there to help people identify the common goals that all of the groups share, and then help find the strategies, tools, and resources that can help them achieve those goals. So really thinking about what are the wins and what is the sort of change that we can all benefit from. What are the ways that we can do grant making and funding that also benefit us and help build that collaborative culture. So, you know, sometimes learning what something is, it's helpful to know what it is, what else is in its ecosystem or what it's not. So 501c3 tables, which is what the Alabama Forward is, a collection or a table of 501c3 groups, is one type of organization that exists in communities or in states where you really do have a more vibrant sort of civic culture. Another type of organization would be a 501c4 table. So here in Alabama, the 501c4 table is Alabama Forward Action. And so Bernard and I know each other because he is a board member for Alabama Forward Action. And in addition to being the director for our C3 table, which is Alabama Forward, I'm also the director for the C4 table, which is Alabama Forward Action. There are some differences in what C3 organizations and C4 organizations are able to do. C3 organizations can't be partisan and are not supposed to attempt to influence elections directly, and they can do a limited amount of grassroots lobbying. C4 organizations can endorse, they can be involved in elections, and don't have limitations on the amount of lobbying they can do. Donations to C3 organizations are tax exempt, tax deductible. Donations to C4 organizations are not, but they are exempt from taxation also. Then donor tables. Donor tables are coalitions or collectives of individuals who are based in a state who have expressed a long-term commitment to funding the work being done by the C3 and C4 tables, as well as other pieces of the civic infrastructure in that state. So here in Alabama, the state donor table is called the Alabama Alliance, and they are a very critical and close partner of ours. Then there are also other entities. You might have heard of PACs. and different things like that. So all of these things exist in a space where you have leaders being developed, investments made in work so that it can be ongoing, and work occurring at all rings of society, from grassroots to municipal, municipal campaigns, or issue-based campaigns, even elections, all the way up to state and federal sorts of campaigns and elections to influence the quality of life in our communities. And there are certain rules that obviously govern what all of those entities can do and can say publicly. So, for examples of state civic engagement tables, you'll see shaded in blue. All of those states shaded in blue are members of a network called the State Voices Network, which basically exists to increase the capacity of civic engagement tables, progressive civic engagement tables. And so each of those states have either had, the first of them established around 2004, progressive civic engagement tables. There were also, this model was definitely used by more conservative groups prior to 2004, but in terms of groups that are concerned about expanding voting rights and explicitly concerned about quality of life of formerly incarcerated people and things typically associated with progressive policies, progressive values, those sorts of civic engagement tables began to come online in the mid 2000s and since then. And so these groups in the blue, you see the names of some of the organizations. And it is important to note, look at the Deep South in comparison to the other regions of the country. And in particular, when you think about, we do see the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and Louisiana, as well as Kentucky. These are many of them are, most of them actually are considered emerging tables. There's also one in Tennessee that's not a member of State Voices Network. I believe there's one coming online in Mississippi, and then we're here in Alabama. So the Deep South is a little bit later to this particular table. But what's interesting is, y'all have been working in philanthropy and in around justice work. You know that the South as a region, after the Civil Rights Movement, is at least over the last 30 years, is definitely funded at disparately lower proportion than the West Coast, the Northeast, the Midwest. So having tables come together to commit to figuring out how to find common strategic agendas, or strategic agendas that have been influenced in a way that reflects a diversity of issues and policy priorities, and then also taking that other step around figuring out how to pool resources and to leverage their coalition structure to deepen the pool of resources available to organizations. That's really an important strategy for groups working in the Deep South. And we've seen that have very important impact in the places that have embraced that model. So you see on this slide, for example, North Carolina, Blueprint North Carolina, and the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. Just think about conversations you've heard regarding work in Georgia, pro-Georgia, or Louisiana, these southern states over the last 10 years compared to ways that those places were depicted, before then. And some of the emergence of vibrant leadership and effective organizing in those states is linked to the support of the tables in their states. So it's a critical piece of infrastructure, but clearly not the only piece. Our mission, we believe in democracy and racial equity. We want every Alabamian to engage in the democratic process, and we support and coordinate the civic engagement work of our partner organizations. So that support can look like financial grants. In September and October, between August and October, we awarded over $300,000 in grants to member organizations and allied C3 groups, civic engagement groups working in Alabama. We've also worked to provide digital tools and access to training to technical experts that can help people figure out how to use voter access network and different systems and tools that sometimes are not as accessible for organizations equally. So we want to be there to use in our role to access tools and to bring in technical assistance, to bring in people that have information, and to negotiate, whatever the price is, to negotiate it on our end so that we can then offer that to the organizations and to our members here at no cost, or, if there is a cost, it'll be dramatically reduced. And our hope is that builds the power to shape public discussion here in Alabama, to that it inspires civic engagement groups and advocates, activists, organizers, however they define themselves, to really use data in decision making, and doing that in a way that builds political power and breaks down barriers to civic participation. To give you a background as far as a history, so this is a relatively recent sort of development. Groups began having exploratory conversations in July 2017, and then in March of 2019, so spring of last year, a smaller group came together to commit to building a steering committee structure, and then identified leaders within that steering committee. And then later that fall, they made a commitment to centralizing leadership from women and Black women, people of color, at the core of the work. So not to have that be a byproduct, Kelly, that's the sort of principle and value certainly that Forward Promise leads with, is that, thinking about the impact and the leadership of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color should not be an afterthought, and it shouldn't even be something that's viewed as a bonus, but that should be the metric that we use to measure what we're doing and how we're doing that work. And so they made that commitment in September 2019 to have a civic engagement table here in Alabama that embraced those values. From July through August of this year, that steering committee was was really strengthening its relationships with major funders and other supporters. So I mentioned the Alabama Alliance, the state donor table, but also reaching outside of the state to the Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation and the NEO Philanthropy, which was very instrumental in the table organizing here. There are leaders in the NEO Philanthropy's State Infrastructure Fund who actually helped to found and served as the early leaders of Georgia's state civic engagement table and their C4 table. So their C3 table is called Pro Georgia. And so because of their knowledge and their experience founding that group in Georgia, they were very helpful in pointing the steering committee here to partners like the State Voices Network, which is the group that had the map that I showed you. They hired me on in August 21. And then since I've been here, we started a campaign associated with voter engagement and voter protection called Shake the Fields. And it was in the context of that campaign that we've distributed the grant money and technical assistance. On October 23rd, we filed our articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State. We currently are fiscally sponsored by Planned Parenthood Southeast, and we'll be filing our 501c3 application in the near future. Once that is filed and we're approved, then we'll, officially be stood up as a fully independent entity. And while that's been happening, the same thing has been happening with the 501c4 engagement table as well. So it's on a very similar timeline, even though they have two separate boards. in our two separate organizations. So again, this is restating our priorities, centering racial equity, creating a pipeline of leadership. It's not just about seeing the same faces and circulating the same money around the same organizations. We want to see people grow from I'm just a volunteer or I'm an activist with no interest in developing an institution, all the way to, if wherever they want to be, if they want to learn how to grow a small organization, or if there's a smaller group that wants to become mid-size or mid-size that wants to scale up, we want to make sure that we can provide resources for the development of those leaders so that they don't feel pressured and understimulated, undersupported here in the state of Alabama, and then feel like they can only grow and only develop outside of this state somewhere else. We want people to have the support needed to do their very creative, brave, courageous work in the state that they're from. And we certainly want to mobilize to build power that propels the state forward, in a direction that reflects our values. And just to break that down outside of that general language, when we're thinking about the actual issues our members are committed to, thinking about how to equitable redistricting. We're going to enter a round of redistricting next year that will directly impact what voters experience at the polls and what happens, at our local level, the way the state functions. And so we want to educate people about that, about the importance of the census, civic access, institutionalizing early voting, working aggressively around voting rights restoration, as well as voter registration. Thinking about democracy reform in terms of our state constitution, have the work that needs to go into drafting a new constitution, strengthening the ethics and campaign financing laws, judicial reform, mass incarceration and our prisons considered the worst in the country, and sort of the pipelines that feed into them, public wellness, reproductive justice, non-discrimination policies, public education, immigration, immigrant communities, and environment and climate change. So these are all, if we take it out of the values language and are focusing on policies, these are some of the policies that our table members are very much committed to educating people on and encouraging people to become more actively actively a part of organizations working on efforts related to those policies. Our board members, so we have 9 members on our board, and they each represent 9 independent organizations. Our chair is Tari Williams from Greater Birmingham Ministries. Kanisha Brown is our vice chair. She's the director of Rolling to the Polls. Isabel Rubio is our treasurer, the executive director of HICA, and Katie Glenn is our secretary, who's on the policy staff at Southern Poverty Law Center. And then Jatan at ACLU, Robin Hayden from Alabama Arise, Jenna King Shepherd, Rodrisha Russo, and Justin Best. And then moving forward, just to forecast some of the work that we're hoping to do over the next 3 to 4 months, and ongoing. So landscape analysis, we really want to work with organizations, particularly grassroots organizations, to do landscape analysis, to figure out who is working on these issues in our communities already. What do they need? How long have they been working on that? What are their staff? If they have a staff, how big? How are they funded? If they're volunteer driven, how long have they been doing the work? In order to know where to plug in, it's important to know who's already attempting to plug those holes. So that's where the landscape analysis comes in. We're definitely interested in expanding our membership, and we'll be distributing packets of information that feature our membership application very soon. There's no cost to join, and the value, the benefit of joining includes having access to grant opportunities, having access to the technical training at no cost, and then that, you know, different tools that we'll be able to acquire, or subscriptions to digital tools that we can then pass on to our members to strengthen their work. Strategic planning, we will be doing some strategic planning in November that will help inform our work plan for the next 2 years, so 2021 through the end of 2023. In December, we hope to organize a pre-2021 legislative agenda event. That'll most likely be on Zoom, or we'll have some speakers, breakout sessions, and then opportunity for folks to exchange ideas and ask questions. Really centered on what is going to happen this legislative session. What are the opportunities to interrupt things that are destabilizing, dehumanizing, discriminatory, and what are the opportunities to lift up and to highlight things that actually would enhance the quality of our lives here. So we'll hear from some folks who can shed light on that. And then ongoing work will be building the working groups within our table. Civic engagement tables are driven by the members, and the driver's seat for the members is the work that they put in within working groups. Different tables have working groups set up in different ways. We're still building our structure in real time, but for any person who joins the table, there will be an opportunity and even an expectation for them to work, to contribute to the work, you know, in an ongoing way, and not in a burdensome way. That's why the staff is here, which is me right now, but definitely in a way that can make sure that what the table does reflects the interests of its members, that reflects the vision of its members, and not just only the board or only the staff. And then we'll be developing some public-facing, a public-facing website modeled in part, or that is in tandem with our engagement campaign, Shake the Field. It won't necessarily say Alabama Forward on that website. We're more of an organization-facing group, but occasionally we'll do things that face the public under different names or under campaign names. So Shake the Field is the name of that effort. And then we'll want to develop visuals and documents that can reflect everything that I've said in engaging ways and fun ways and ways that draw people in. So that is, I guess our work so far in a nutshell. And I'll just pause here to see if you have any questions at all. Or even thoughts. Probably more better would be advice or thoughts.
Well, I want to commend you all on the work you've done and the groundwork that you've laid. It's critically important to the future of the state and forward movement in our state. And I have held fast to the hope that we really do have the ability to flip this thing, or to put these progressive ideologies and policies in place. And the question has been, how do you galvanize the people, the right people, and form a coalition or a collective such as this to do so? And so I'm fascinated. I'm learning as you're sharing, because I was not familiar. Like you said, I've heard of super PACs who get behind, specific candidates or groups and promote them and campaign with them or support them financially, but not this particular format.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just really trying to think through, what we have to bring to the efforts and to the table, both myself individually, but then also thinking about the Mariah Group and
right.
the work that we do our company is growing very quickly. So
How big is your staff now?
I would say in the last 6 months, we started out, in the Mariah group specifically with Rhonda and myself and an
Yeah,
admin.
yeah.
And in the last 6 months, we've added 2 VPs. Um,
In the last
pro-
6 months?
in the last 6 months, I think we've hired about 5 or 6 people. So it's been wild to be
Right.
doing that in the middle of a pandemic. But since
Are they in the Huntsville area or all
no,
around? Yeah.
no, there's right now 4 of us are in the Huntsville office. We have somebody in North Carolina, and then we have 2 people in DC, and then we have somebody in Delaware.
Wow.
And then we just had a new hire, and I'm not even sure where or who right now. I'm waiting for
Yeah.
information. So, no, I'm excited, and I've been itching to get my hands in the Alabama soil. But we've been
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
at capacity in terms of the Forward Promise work,
Right.
which is now moving. We were a national program office of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and now that work is moving under the Mariah Group out of the University of Pennsylvania, where it's been housed.
Really?
And we're in the process now over these next 3 months of making that transition where Rhonda will be housing that and in the Mariah Group. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's a lot going on.
What
And
what will Howard's relationship be at that point? Sort of like a
so
visionary.
he'll still be like our thought leader, thought partner. Won't have a role in the day-to-day operations of the project, but will all still work with us on the research
Mm,
piece. So
that's
right,
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good time, but it's a busy time too. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the growth. Your
Thank you.
voice and the work that y'all do is, I think, this year underscores the need, the need for it like no other.
A sense of
Um,
urgency, indeed.
yeah, yeah. And
We
then
just
what?
did, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, no. What were you about to?
No, we just did this afternoon a presentation for the DA's office or in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and all the district attorneys and their staff around our framework for disrupting dehumanization and
Hmm.
the cycle of dehumanization. And I saw in your priorities, the health component, the healing component, but also your mention of how dehumanization is sort of tied to all of this and in the policies that are implemented or the pushback on policies that can actually help communities of color. And so I'm thinking about that framework and where it might apply and
Hmm.
some educational things, opportunities we might be able to do um, moving forward. So
Yeah, those DA offices are critical, critical as far as how we actually live and experience the rights that we fight to have. Because
mhm.
once you have that record and you're kind of under the power of the state, we may have had an expansion of certain rights, but then you can't even exercise them. Um,
Yeah.
DAs have a lot of influence on that. So
And then when you look at the Alabama ballot and you see all of the the judges and Supreme Court nominee or races or whatever are all uncontested and conservative, how do you begin to build a pipeline of leaders for those things? Because it's like that every election and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, so that's where the conversation would shift to the C4 table. Um, and I know Bernard's work, I'll say this for him, in his role with the NAACP, they don't actually, as a policy, the state chapters of the NAACP don't get involved with endorsing. So their work actually looks more like C3 work, even though they are a C4 organization. But there are some other members of the C4 table that are able to weigh in and are thinking about strategies to really address that what you just said, uncontested elections and things, just the way that elections take place in the state as a whole, and really thinking about, well, what would different leadership look like, and who's going to inform their values, who's going to show them how to actually use data to assess what they're doing, where do they get the skill set to even know how to lead in a different way. And usually, or I won't say usually, but hopefully that comes from actually progressive life-centered organizations and movements that have helped to groom those leaders before they decide to become candidates. And so that's really where that's the connection between the C3 work and then people who emerge from that and ultimately want to directly influence policy in the C4 space. The C3s are there to educate, train, and get beyond election cycles and talk about character and who are you, and what is your vision for the community? What do you know about the history of that issue? And then let me show you the technical ways that you can go and achieve that change in your community, even if they have limited room to actually lead on implementing that change. But that's where the C4s and those other entities come in. And so it's that we have a lot of space here to build those things. And you ask, what could the Mariah Group bring? Wisdom and perspective. You know about work that's happening on that map that I showed. And for us, the whole concept, we're learning about what happened in Virginia, what happened in Georgia, what happened in North Carolina, and then getting on the phone, talking to somebody in Seattle or Kentucky, and they're willing to share their resources, which most importantly is time and their relationships. Money is good, but when they're willing to actually share their hope in us and what we can do, now we have a relationship. And so you have a lot of those, and you have a lot of perspective, and you're accustomed to thinking about what's going on in other spaces. Who are the people that do that from a place of genuine conviction and want to share resources with others? And I think the practice you have in thinking that way is itself an asset. So, just I definitely keep you plugged in as we develop our materials, but we would certainly benefit from y'all's perspective.
We appreciate that.
Let me just kind of chime in on the issue of judges and other people across the state being running uncontested. Now, specifically for the judges, the appellate judges, and that's on the civil as well as the criminal side, we're involved in a lawsuit through LDF, Legal Defense Fund, to sue Alabama to change the way appellate judges are elected. Right now, all appellate judges are elected via a large system, and it's very difficult to impossible for anyone that's not ultra conservative to get elected in Alabama on a statewide ballot. We certainly was glad to get Doug Jones elected, and hopefully he can get elected again. But in the state of Alabama, all the judges, appellate judges, they are white, and they're all elected at large. And if we can change that, because right now people of color don't have anyone to represent them on appellate courts. And when a person comes to the NAACP or any attorney at all and says, I want to appeal the court decision at the lower level, and they go to appellate, they realize who they're up against, and they don't even want to bother with it because they know they're the court's decision before they start, because it's ultra conservative, white, most of them are male. They have some females on there, but and that's something that we're, like say, going through the courts to try to get them to change how Alabama does that, since they won't do it on their own.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Bernard, is there a name? Does that suit have a name? Like if we wanted to follow it in the news?
Yeah, I'll have to get it to you. I don't remember what the name of it, but yeah, it has a name.
Is it Simelton versus Alabama?
No. No. It doesn't even have the NAACP's name in it, but we're one of the plaintiffs, and of course we're the plaintiffs in a lot of the voting rights and civil rights lawsuit that LDF filed, as well as the lawyers committees. We are part of those.
And there's another thing that y'all have been involved in. I think before we go, I want to make sure Kelly knows about this too. The Voter Protection Network.
Yeah.
Y'all, can you with LDF, a bunch of other groups? Can you tell a little bit about that?
Right. What we're doing is, and specifically for the upcoming election on next Tuesday, is we will have attorneys that will be available to be on call to respond to people who are being disenfranchised, voting rights are being suppressed. And, it may be something that they can either work out with the local judge or the local voting officials. And if not, then they can, of course, go to court with it. And so we have, I think it was 6 attorneys that are that we're working specifically with, and I know other organizations also have attorneys, but and we also publish information about your rights as a voter. A lot of people think that, well, I went in there, I couldn't vote, they said I couldn't vote. Well, that's maybe not the end of the story, and you need to be more assertive in your effort to try to find out why you're not on the voting polls. And I think I've worked at polls here in Limestone County, and I would say most of the poll workers are very good about trying to help a person, get to the right place if where they came to is not the right place. But some of them will, just, you're not registered here, so we don't know where you need to go. But each of the supervisors at the polling location, they have the information for the entire county in which, and so they should be able to call that person name up and tell exactly where, if they're not on the poll that the poll workers have, the supervisor will be able to call that person name up somewhere in the county and say, well, you need to go over to this location to vote. And so we just try and educate voters on, their rights as voters, and not just to, take a no as a no without asking some additional questions and demanding that, and we tell everybody, if all else fails, the polls are getting ready to close, request a provisional ballot, and at least you will have some chance of making your voice heard through a provisional ballot, even though I don't put a lot of trust and faith in them. But if you don't have any other choice, then certainly request a provisional ballot and try and work it out the next day, whatever the issues were. But just like and some of the courthouses in Alabama, they lost power today because of the storm that moved through. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until some people called me. And so those people who had planned to vote absent in person today, they lost that opportunity. But the law says that the court, it will be open the next day. So they are supposed to be open tomorrow to let the people vote. And some of our people have been working with the Secretary of State's office, as well as the local probate judges, and to make sure that people, first of all, make sure that the courthouse is going to be open, and then secondly, that somehow the word gets out to the people that you have a opportunity on tomorrow to, because today was supposed to be the last day of in-person voting.
And then they're even involved in work to continue doing voter engagement after Tuesday,
Right.
post-election work, which is also critical, because that information, we still need it. What we about to say?
What we do is our poll monitors, as well as members, we give them a form.
Oh,
I'm
we
here.
lost. Evan disappeared. I was like, we lost Evan.
No,
I just
you
needed
turn
to
the video
yawn. I
off.
didn't want to be rude, so I said, what did you say?
We give them a form to capture what we call any voter suppression efforts at their polling location, and we have the poll monitors, and afterwards we collect that data, and first of all, we look for, what happened to the person, but also we look for any trends there that, is developing. Is it all at kind of one polling place, or all at one county, or is one county a higher percentage of issues than others? And that data is used later on for filing lawsuits and stuff like that, and so that's incredible, necessary data to have.
Wow. In some of those suits, have you heard about how, well, it's interesting because sometimes if you're in the barbershop or wherever, just sitting around listening to people talk, and people will have these kinds of conspiracy theories, that this idea that this person in this office is coordinating with this person. And a lot of times that is not happening. It's that, but the few times when I won't say the few, but the times, it's interesting when litigation can help uncover stuff like that. And often we know that lawsuits don't, but the times when they are able to do it, is through things like this. They'll find those patterns, and then they can trace that back to certain people. And then if they can get past a certain type of judgment on the front end, where the people they're suing have to give some kind of discovery, and then they have access to the information, like their records, their phone records or whatever. And then you can kind of find, these are very needle in a haystack cases when they can do that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that it's an everyday thing, but I know that that's what those lawyers at LDF are hungry to be able to, to stumble upon if they could, right?
Right. I mean, any evidence that they can collect to help determine any kind of pattern of voter suppression, those kinds of data, and sometimes it's things that, we don't even think about, that is voter suppression,
Right.
And Alabama, well, not only Alabama, but southern states, they have a tendency now to change your polling location for, and I guess they can justify, because you can almost justify anything, but people have been voting there for many years, and they change the location, and they're supposed to notify everybody, but for some reason, I guarantee you on Thursday there's going to be, keep saying Thursday, Tuesday there are going to be some people that call us and said, my polling place has been changed. They didn't send me a notification in the mail, and and of course the probate judge say, well, we sent notification to everybody that in that area, and the card didn't come back. It's, you can't prove that they didn't send it, but the person didn't receive it, or something like that. And so those are kind of tactics that they use to suppress the vote. And they in Alabama, just like the other states will, or southern states in particular, they do purging. And if you haven't voted in the last 2 to 3 elections, your name go in kind of a inactive file. But if you don't vote in the last, I think it's 4 elections or 5, then you're removed from the polls totally, and you got to re-register all over again in order to be able to vote.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
oh yeah. So
Yeah,
that's why we tell everybody check, double check, and triple check your name. I mean, it's very easy. You can go to the Secretary of State website and click on the I think it's election something, and put your name. You will go to a field where you put your name, date of birth, and your name will come up, where you registered, where you're supposed to vote at,
Mm.
And so we tell people to check that all the time, and make sure that you haven't been purged, first of all, and then secondly, make sure that you know where your polling location is.
Yeah.
And they have these little QR codes, you can just take your iPhone and put it up over that. And I don't think this one takes you to the Secretary of State website, but we have one that it takes you to the Secretary of State. Oh, here it is. This one here takes you to the Secretary of State's website, and with your iPhone, and you can just put your information in on that. So
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of y'all's time. And before we stop, though, you sound like you were about to say something a few seconds
Me?
ago. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to vent my frustration with the voter suppression, and I'm very curious, and I look forward to hearing more from you, Mr. Similton, about some of the lawsuits and the outcomes and what happens when those are filed, because just as we discussed the judicial system, and we know they're not going to regulate themselves, they're not going to penalize themselves. Voter suppression, there's the subtle types, but then a lot of it's blatant and everyone knows it. They're not really trying to hide that it's being done because they don't care.
right.
And it just seems like no one's really been able to do a lot about it here in the South, and where there's no balance of power really. And now we don't have balance of power really in the Supreme Court either. So it's just really interesting, and it disenfranchises or discourages people from participating in the process, of course. So then that just further exacerbates the issue. But I know there's a lot of work to be done, and all we can do is keep pushing, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
And you hit the nail on the head with the courts. It used to be that, after the Voting Rights Act of 65, you could somewhat depend on the federal courts ruling fair, kind of on the side of justice. But with the courts where they are stacked now, with all the people that Trump has put in, and the people he has put on the Supreme Court, it's going to be very, very tough. I was talking to one attorney the other day, and he's saying that, well, we got to try to win in the state courts. And I said, well, in Alabama, that's just as bad as the federal court. So we got some tough days ahead of us when it comes to civil rights, human rights, and voting rights. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Very, very tough.
I want to leave y'all with one thing though, just to let's definitely dig into our history of the tough things that we've already historically experienced, particularly here in this state. And one of the things that kind of troubled my spirit learning about it, that period of lynching that really starts from 1877, as far as, it was already happening, but when it starts surging around then. But before that happened, slavery ends in 1860. Well, emancipation, end of the Civil War is 1865, and then following that, you have, you know, the ratification of the Reconstruction Amendments to the Constitution, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. And then you even have passage of civil rights legislation in Congress that is probably more progressive at a federal level than many things they've done since then, up until today. And then you have the founding of the Freedmen's Bureau, right? And an organization that for a little bit of time was existing to help settle newly freed families. And you have people joining the legislature, going to Congress. And I just imagine, you know, how do you go from in one generation, slavery, fugitive slave, even if I run away, even if I live for 10 years free on the New York border or in Baltimore or Philadelphia, somebody can steal me and hustle me back. I'm living with that that cortisone in my head, that constant stress. And then now I have an experience to where I can vote and you know, these things. And then there's that election in 1876, and it comes down, it's a contested election. And the congressmen from the two parties make a deal that they'll allow the person from the other party to become president in exchange for those federal troops withdrawing from the South. And I just think about, you know, what our relatives, what our ancestors, what does that feel like when you have to stand there in November of 1876 and think about what 1877 is going to be? And somehow they got up, you know, and everything that we know happened between then up until our births. And despite everything that happened and all of the broken promises, they created jazz music, gospel music.
That's in the soul. That's in their nature, and that's some of that is kind of born out of slavery, you know, because of the, you know, of what we went through, you know, as a people.
I love that you said that. I actually recorded a video to myself to encourage myself because of the anxiety I was having about the election next week, saying that exact same thing. Like, no, whatever happens, remember all of the contributions, all the things we've made, the ways that we've still managed to create, have joy, make beautiful things, take care of each other, all of those things. And I literally recorded a video to myself, reminding myself about that the other day to calm my spirit. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. We got to keep reminding each other of that, because that's the one thing that can't be bought and can't be given to us, but we can give it away, is that memory of who we are and what we've endured. And that's something that's unique to our culture. And I think that's, you know, there's a lot of pain and obviously a lot of trauma in there. But there's something that in times like this, it's available to us if we call on it. So, but I appreciate y'all spending time with me today, and we'll be talking soon. All right.
Appreciate you both. Thank you. It's good to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Kelly. Look forward to seeing you sometime around in Huntsville.
Yes, absolutely.
Y'all should exchange emails.
Let me throw mine in the chat here.
Yep. You know how to get in the chat, right, Bernard?
Yeah.
I was thinking one day that if you made a list of everything that's good about America, the almost all of it would be because of our ancestors and people of color.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hold on, I gotta scream at some children. Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Bernard, I'm gonna put yours in there so she has it, okay?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm just gonna send her an email right now.
Oh, okay. Then she'll have it too. And then his is in there and he's emailing you too now, Kevin. Okay, y'all, I need to go too. We'll
All
see
right.
y'all
All right, then.
soon. All right, be good.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank y'all.